Imagine waking up one morning to discover that the person you trusted most, the one who claimed to live with the highest values, who always spoke of principles, honesty, and integrity, had been silently betraying you the entire time. The shock isn't just in their actions, but in the unbearable irony. The person who preached morality was the one who failed it most profoundly, and yet, if you look closer, you realize something far more unsettling. This isn't just about one person. This pattern, this paradox, runs like a hidden current beneath countless lives. Perhaps it runs beneath your own, because here is the uncomfortable truth we rarely speak aloud. Many of us are addicted to feeling morally superior. It isn't the kind of addiction that leaves bottles on the floor or needles in the veins. It leaves something far more invisible, an intoxicating sense of self-righteousness, the belief that I am better than you because of what I believe, how I behave, or the values I claim to uphold. And unlike other addictions, this one disguises itself as virtue. But stop for a moment and ask yourself, how much of what you consider moral is truly about compassion or truth, and how much is about quietly proving yourself better than the person next to you? When you argue with someone, do you seek understanding? Or do you crave the subtle rush of superiority that comes from being right? Could it be that our hunger to feel morally above others is not a sign of strength at all, but of weakness, an addiction we have dressed up in the language of virtue? This is the paradox at the heart of our age. We believe we are fighting for goodness, when in truth we may only be feeding our own egos. Think about it. Social media platforms thrive on outrage, feeding us endless opportunities to feel morally superior. Every scandal, every mistake, every headline becomes an invitation to stand atop the pedestal of righteousness and point a finger. The cycle is addictive. Each post, each comment, each judgment is a hit of dopamine, a digital communion in the church of superiority. But what if this moral high is no different from any other drug? What if every time we indulge in it, we numb ourselves to something deeper, the raw, uncomfortable truth of our own flaws? Imagine a society where people compete not with wealth or beauty, but with how pure they appear, how ethical they sound, how uncompromisingly they condemn others. Imagine friendships strained, families divided, nations fractured, not because people failed to be moral, but because they were too addicted to appearing moral. Doesn't that sound eerily familiar? Perhaps you've seen it in your own life. A friend who lectures you about kindness, but whose words cut sharper than any insult. A colleague who endlessly talks about justice, yet quietly manipulates every situation in their favor. A family member who insists on doing what's right, yet uses morality as a weapon to control. And maybe, just maybe, you've seen it in yourself too. Here lies the great question. Are we truly moral? Or are we just addicted to feeling morally superior? It is a question that unsettles because it turns the spotlight inward. We want morality to be simple, clean, unshakable. We want to believe we are the good ones and others are the bad. But the reality is messier, darker, and far more uncomfortable. Perhaps the real danger isn't that evil thrives in the world, but that the illusion of goodness blinds us to our own shadow. Carl Jung once said, "The brighter the light, the darker the shadow." The more fervently we cling to our sense of righteousness, the deeper we may bury the parts of ourselves that are anything but righteous. And so we must ask, what if the fight for moral superiority is not a fight for justice, but a mask for fear? Fear of our own imperfections, fear of being ordinary, fear of facing the uncomfortable truth that we are no better than anyone else. This is the contradiction that gnaws at the edges of our lives. We seek morality to transcend our flaws, yet in doing so we often fall into a new prison, the prison of superiority. The question remains, haunting and unresolved. If morality itself becomes addictive, how do we know when we are serving truth and when we are only serving ourselves? The answer is not easy. It demands peeling back illusions, challenging sacred beliefs, and confronting the psychology and philosophy that underpin human nature itself. And that is where we must go next, into the hidden roots of this addiction. For only by seeing the darkness that feeds it can we begin to break free. If you strip away the surface justifications, what lies beneath the addiction of moral superiority? Why does this hunger to stand above others masquerade as virtue? Why does it persist across cultures, religions, and eras, so familiar that it feels almost natural? The answer begins with something unsettling. Moral superiority is not about morality at all. It is about identity. From the moment you are a child, you learn that belonging and survival depend not only on what you do, but on how others perceive you. You are praised for being good, scolded for being bad. Before you even understand what morality is, you understand its social currency. To be moral is not just to act ethically. It is to earn safety, recognition, and love. And so slowly, morality becomes less about truth and more about image. Carl Jung warned of the persona, the mask we wear to appear acceptable to society. The addiction to moral superiority grows from this very mask. We do not simply want to be good, we want to be seen as good. That distinction is everything. When goodness becomes a costume, it is no longer about the soul, it is about survival. But here lies the deeper psychological hook. Being seen as good is not enough. The ego demands contrast. You feel your goodness more sharply when set against someone else's failure. Moral superiority, then, is not just about virtue, it is about competition. If you are better, someone else must be worse. Nietzsche saw this with terrifying clarity. He argued that morality, especially in its collective form, often grows not from love, but from resentment. The weak, unable to dominate with strength, create moral codes that condemn the powerful. In this way, morality becomes a weapon, a way to reverse the balance of power. Yet once created, this weapon takes on a life of its own. Even those who claim to fight for compassion and truth often use morality as a tool for domination, a subtle whip to keep others beneath them. Think about the psychology here. In a world filled with uncertainty, loss, and powerlessness, moral superiority gives us something intoxicating: control. You may not be rich, beautiful, or influential, but you can always be better than someone else. A criminal, a liar, a hypocrite, a politician, a stranger online. Whoever they are, their failure confirms your worth. But why does this addiction feel so natural? Because our brains are wired for it. Studies in social psychology show that humans experience a surge of dopamine when they receive moral affirmation. To be told you are right, you are good, you are just, this lights up the same reward circuits as food, sex, or money. Neuroscience confirms what Nietzsche and Jung only intuited. Morality is not just an abstract code, it is a biological addiction, and like every addiction, it feeds on denial. Schopenhauer once wrote that human beings are driven less by reason than by the blind will, the raw, unconscious force of desire. We want to believe we are rational, but in truth, much of what we call morality is simply will dressed up as logic. When we insist on our moral superiority, we are not defending truth, we are defending the will's desperate need for validation. The result is a tragic irony. The louder we declare our righteousness, the more we reveal our insecurity. Consider how this plays out in society. Aldous Huxley, in his critique of mass culture, warned that people are easily seduced by illusions of virtue. Propaganda works not by convincing us of facts, but by flattering our sense of moral clarity. Wars have been waged, genocides justified, and neighbors betrayed, all in the name of moral superiority. Once convinced that we stand on the side of the good, we no longer question the harm we commit. And this is not only collective, it is deeply personal. Sartre once described bad faith, the self-deception we practice to avoid facing the freedom and responsibility of existence. Moral superiority is a form of bad faith. It allows us to dodge the painful recognition of our own flaws. Instead of admitting, I too am weak, selfish, or cruel at times, we project these flaws onto others. We condemn them so we can pretend we are pure. But here's the philosophical tragedy. Every time we do this, we step further from authenticity. We cling to the illusion of virtue, but the cost is truth. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, once said that meaning cannot be found in superiority, but only in responsibility, our ability to respond to life with integrity, even in suffering. But addiction blinds us to this. We would rather feel superior than responsible, rather feed the ego than confront the abyss of our own limitations. This is the hidden root of the addiction. Moral superiority offers an escape from vulnerability. To feel morally superior is to shield yourself from the terror of being ordinary, flawed, and finite. It is to silence the inner voice that whispers, "You are no better than anyone else." And so, like any addict, we cling to the substance even as it poisons us. The problem then is not morality itself, it is the ego's hijacking of morality. What began as a compass becomes a crutch. What began as a guide becomes a drug. But drugs always have consequences, and the deeper we fall into this addiction, the less we see how it corrodes us, how it warps relationships, families, communities, and nations. That is the next truth we must confront, the unseen consequences of moral superiority. They are subtle, insidious, and devastating. And once you begin to see them, you cannot unsee them. Every addiction carries its cost. Alcohol shatters livers and families. Drugs collapse minds into ruin. But the addiction of moral superiority, its damage is harder to see, yet it spreads deeper, into the very fabric of human connection. The most dangerous poisons are the ones that look like medicine, and moral superiority disguises itself as health, as truth, as justice. Yet beneath its shining mask, it corrodes relationships, dismantles empathy, and fractures societies. The personal cost, a life of hidden isolation. Think for a moment about what it means to constantly measure your worth against others. Every interaction becomes a silent contest. Am I more virtuous than this person? Am I kinder, wiser, more just? You do not realize it, but this turns life into a zero-sum game. For you to win, someone else must lose. At first, the feeling is exhilarating. You bask in the quiet glow of superiority. But what follows is subtle and devastating. Isolation. No one wants to be truly close to the person who always sits on a pedestal. Relationships built on moral superiority are fragile, suffocating, or false. Friends avoid vulnerability around you. They do not confess their mistakes or reveal their struggles, because your superiority makes them feel small. Family members walk on eggshells, fearing your judgment. Your partner begins to resent your constant moral high ground. The irony is painful. The more you crave to be seen as good, the more you drive others away. In the end, you are left with your righteousness, but alone. The psychological trap, the mirror of denial, then comes the inner cost. Each time you indulge in superiority, you silence an opportunity for self-awareness. Instead of asking, "Where am I flawed? Where could I grow?" you deflect. "At least I am better than them." Psychologists call this projection. You see in others the very flaws you refuse to face in yourself. You condemn them for arrogance, cruelty, hypocrisy, or weakness, while unknowingly burying those same traits in your own shadow. Jung called this the shadow self, the dark, repressed aspects of the psyche. The more addicted you are to superiority, the more blind you become to your shadow. This blindness creates a paradox. Outwardly, you seem righteous. Inwardly, you rot. Your ego expands, but your soul withers. The relational fallout. Families divided. Now picture this on the scale of families. How many siblings have turned against each other, not because of wealth, not because of inheritance, but because one claimed to be the morally good child? One insists, "I was the one who cared for our parents," while another replies, "No, you only pretended. You did it to look virtuous." The argument is rarely about money or responsibility. It is about who gets to claim the crown of moral superiority. Parents, too, fall into the trap. They weaponize morality against their children, insisting, "I know what's right and you don't." Children grow resentful, feeling judged and unseen until eventually they rebel, not against morality itself, but against the suffocating superiority that cloaked it. The result? Families broken not by immorality, but by the addiction to appearing more moral than one another. The social consequences. Communities in conflict. The consequences do not stop at families. They ripple outward into entire communities. Look at politics. Nations no longer argue over solutions. They battle over who is more righteous. Every debate becomes a morality play, each side painting itself as the savior and the other as the villain. Dialogue collapses. Compromise dies. And in the ashes, what remains is polarization, tribalism, and hatred. Why? Because moral superiority dehumanizes. When you see yourself as superior, you no longer see the other person as fully human. They are not a flawed individual with pain, history, and dignity. They are simply wrong, and once someone is wrong in the deepest moral sense, you can justify anything against them, silencing them, shaming them, even destroying them. This is the hidden toxin of moral superiority. It transforms disagreement into war. The cultural addiction, outrage as entertainment. And what about culture? Scroll through social media for 5 minutes, and you will witness the addiction in its purest form. Outrage is no longer a response to injustice, it is a performance. Every scandal becomes an opportunity for people to shout, "Look how much better I am than them." But outrage without responsibility is just theater. It feels good, but it does nothing. Worse, it spreads cynicism. The more we indulge in performative superiority, the less faith anyone has in genuine morality. Goodness becomes cheap, loud, and hollow. The result? A world where people stop trusting virtue itself. They assume every moral claim hides a secret agenda. And so true morality drowns in a sea of false superiority. The existential price, losing yourself. At its core, the greatest consequence of moral superiority is existential. By constantly feeding your ego with the illusion of being better, you lose touch with the one thing that makes life meaningful. Authenticity. Sartre warned of bad faith, living a lie to escape the terror of freedom. When you are addicted to superiority, you live in bad faith. You are not truly moral. You are only acting moral for the applause of an invisible audience. You are not free. You are chained to the endless performance of goodness, and slowly, without realizing it, you become hollow. Your life is not about love, growth, or meaning. It is about comparison. Every moral declaration becomes another brick in the prison of the self. The final warning: this is why the addiction is so insidious. Unlike other vices, it does not announce its destruction with obvious symptoms. Instead, it seeps in silently. It looks like justice but breeds division. It looks like compassion but creates judgment. It looks like strength but hides fear. By the time you realize the damage, it is often too late. Relationships have withered, communities have fractured, and you yourself have lost the ability to see who you truly are. And yet there is a way out. But it is not what you think. The solution is not to reject morality, nor is it to silence your sense of justice. The rebellion must be far more radical. You must learn how to dismantle the ego's grip on morality itself. You must learn how to live beyond superiority. Every addiction whispers the same lie: you cannot live without me. Moral superiority is no different. It convinces you that if you let go of the pedestal, you will fall into chaos. That if you stop comparing, you will lose your worth. That if you stop performing morality, no one will recognize you as good. But here is the rebellion: you can live without superiority. In fact, you can only begin to truly live once you do. Breaking free from this addiction is not about discarding morality, it is about reclaiming it from the hands of the ego. It is about returning morality to what it was always meant to be. Not a weapon, not a competition, but a compass that guides you toward authenticity, humility, and connection. Step 1. Seeing through the illusion. The first act of rebellion is vision. Addiction thrives in blindness. It dies in light. To break free, you must see superiority for what it is: a mask for insecurity, a performance for approval, a drug that numbs you from your own flaws. Ask yourself the questions you have long avoided. When I call someone wrong, am I seeking truth or am I seeking control? When I insist on being right, do I care about understanding or do I care about winning? When I parade my morality, am I truly serving others or am I feeding my ego? To ask these questions is terrifying because the answers strip away illusions. But only when the illusion dies does freedom begin. Step 2. The practice of humility. Nietzsche wrote that man is something that shall be overcome. The ego, drunk on superiority, resists this truth. But humility, the art of seeing yourself as neither above nor below, cuts through the addiction. Humility is not weakness. It does not mean self-hatred or erasing your worth. True humility is strength. It is the courage to say, I am flawed like everyone else. I do not need to be superior to be valuable. Think of the most authentic people you have met. They did not need to prove themselves morally flawless. They could admit mistakes, acknowledge ignorance, and even laugh at their own faults. Why? Because they were not enslaved to the addiction of being better. They were free. The rebellion begins when you replace the hunger to be superior with the courage to be human. Step 3. Shifting from judgment to curiosity. Superiority thrives on judgment. It shrinks people down into categories: good, bad, right, wrong, moral, immoral. To break free, you must shift from judgment to curiosity. Instead of saying they are wrong, ask, why do they see the world that way? What pain, history, or belief shapes their perspective? Curiosity does not mean agreement. It does not erase truth or deny justice, but it prevents you from feeding the ego's drug. It opens the possibility of understanding rather than domination. Imagine a world where disagreements were not wars of superiority, but opportunities for exploration. Where people ask questions instead of delivering verdicts. Where listening was valued as much as speaking. That world is possible, but only if enough people rebel against the addiction. Step 4. Choosing responsibility over righteousness. Viktor Frankl once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." The addict of superiority reacts automatically: judge, condemn, perform. The rebel of freedom pauses. They use the space to choose responsibility over righteousness. What does this mean? Responsibility is not about proving you are right. It is about responding to life with integrity. It is about asking not, how can I appear good, but what can I do that truly serves others? Righteousness seeks applause. Responsibility seeks meaning. When you choose responsibility, you step off the stage of performance and into the arena of action. You do not need to be superior. You only need to be sincere. Step 5. Practicing radical self-honesty. Perhaps the most difficult rebellion of all is the inner one, facing your own shadow. Jung insisted that no one becomes whole without confronting the darkness within themselves. The addict hides from this darkness by projecting it outward. But the rebel turns inward, asking, where do I lie? Where do I manipulate? Where do I use morality as a weapon? This is painful. It strips away the comfort of superiority. But paradoxically, it gives birth to freedom. When you admit your shadow, you no longer need to hide it. You no longer need to attack others to distract from it. You can stand naked before the truth and survive. This is not the death of morality. It is its rebirth. Step 6. Choosing connection over comparison. The deepest antidote to superiority is connection. Superiority isolates. Connection unites. Superiority builds walls. Connection opens doors. When you see another person not as a rival in the moral game, but as a fellow human being, flawed, struggling, longing for meaning just like you, the addiction loses its power. Consider this. Every person you meet carries hidden battles you cannot see. They too wrestle with fear, weakness, and regret. The moment you remember this, you step down from the pedestal and walk beside them. And in that moment, morality is no longer performance, it is compassion. The silent revolution. The rebellion is not loud. It does not announce itself with slogans or victories. It begins quietly, in the heart, in the mind, in the small choices of daily life. It is in the parent who admits to their child, I was wrong. It is in the friend who listens instead of lecturing. It is in the stranger who, instead of condemning online, asks a question. It is in you, in the simple act of choosing humility over superiority. This rebellion is not against morality itself, but against its corruption. It is the rebellion of authenticity over performance, of responsibility over ego, of truth over illusion. And once you begin, you will see the world differently. You will notice how superiority masquerades everywhere, in politics, religion, media, even casual conversations. And you will no longer be seduced by it. Instead, you will choose the harder, quieter, truer path, to live not above others, but with them. Imagine for a moment standing at the edge of a mirror, not the kind that shows you your face, but the kind that reflects your soul. You lean in, expecting to see goodness, clarity, and moral strength. Instead, you see fractures, flaws you have long denied, shadows you have hidden, vulnerabilities you have buried beneath the armor of superiority. At first, you recoil. For years, perhaps for decades, you have told yourself that morality was your crown, that your goodness was proof of your worth. But now you see the truth. Morality, as you lived it, was never about truth. It was about fear. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of being flawed. Fear of being seen as no different from anyone else. And in this moment of raw honesty, the illusion shatters. You understand what has been hidden all along. Moral superiority is not morality. It is the ego's counterfeit. This realization is both devastating and liberating. The great unmasking, the ego thrives on division. It whispers, "You are good, they are bad. You are right, they are wrong. You are better, they are worse." And for a long time you believed it. But now you see the game for what it is. A desperate trick to avoid facing your own humanness. The ultimate truth is not that you are better or worse than others. It is that you are the same. This sameness does not mean uniformity. Each person carries unique strengths, traumas, histories, and dreams. But beneath the layers, the essence is shared: fragility, longing, imperfection, and the search for meaning. To cling to superiority is to deny this shared essence. To let it go is to return home to what is real. The rebellion of humility leads to the revelation of unity, the collapse of comparison. Think of how much energy you have spent comparing, competing, posturing. How many arguments, online or in person, were fueled not by truth, but by the quiet craving to feel superior? How many friendships grew cold because you could not admit your fault? How many moments of joy were stolen by the inner whisper, "At least I am better than them"? But the truth is clear now. Comparison is a prison. It chains you to illusions that never satisfy. The ultimate freedom is not to win the comparison, but to step outside of it entirely. When you release the addiction, you realize there was never a contest to begin with. Life is not a moral scoreboard. There is no cosmic ranking, no secret ledger of superiority. There is only the question each soul must face. Am I living authentically? Am I living with love, truth, and courage? The moment you understand this, the craving dissolves. You no longer need to be above. You only need to be real, the rebirth of morality. So what then becomes of morality once superiority is stripped away? Does it vanish? Does it lose its force? No, in fact, it becomes stronger. When morality is no longer a performance, it becomes a practice. When it is no longer about image, it becomes about impact. When it is no longer a competition, it becomes a compass. You realize that true morality is not about proclaiming goodness, but about living it quietly, consistently, imperfectly. It is not about shaming others, but about taking responsibility for your own actions. It is not about appearing flawless, but about having the courage to admit your flaws. The addiction was a counterfeit. The real thing was waiting beneath it all along, the courage to see yourself. Perhaps the most powerful realization of all is this: freedom does not come from denying your shadow, but from integrating it. Jung taught that wholeness is not achieved by pretending to be perfect, but by acknowledging your imperfections and learning to live with them consciously. The person who admits their anger is less dangerous than the one who hides it under a mask of virtue. The person who admits their weakness is stronger than the one who hides behind superiority. The person who can say, "I too am flawed," is more trustworthy than the one who insists on being righteous. This is the paradox that the addict never sees. In admitting your imperfection, you become more fully human. And in becoming more fully human, you touch the essence of morality itself. The great return, the addiction of superiority, isolated you. It made you stand apart, looking down. But the ultimate truth brings you back. Not above, not below, but beside. You see the people around you differently now. Not as rivals in the game of righteousness, but as companions in the struggle of existence. You see their flaws and recognize your own. You see their pain and remember yours. You see their humanity, and in that you rediscover your own. This return is not sentimental, it is profound. To live beside others without superiority is to live in truth. It is to finally escape the endless hunger of the ego and step into the quiet fullness of being. The final vision: imagine, once again, waking up one morning. But this time, you do not wake with the need to prove yourself better. You do not scroll through headlines seeking outrage to validate your worth. You do not look at your neighbor and silently measure their flaws against your virtues. Instead, you wake with a simpler, deeper awareness. I am human. They are human. We are both flawed, both fragile, both searching. And in that awareness, you find something greater than superiority. You find compassion. You find authenticity. You find freedom. The addiction of moral superiority ends the moment you realize there is no ladder to climb, no throne to sit on, no audience to impress. There is only the life before you, the choices you make, the love you give, the truth you dare to face. This is the final, most powerful realization. The highest morality is not superiority, but humility. Not the illusion of being better, but the courage to be real. Not the addiction to appearing good, but the daily practice of living with compassion, integrity, and authenticity. And when you embrace this truth, you discover the irony at the heart of the human journey. You never needed to be superior at all. You only needed to be human.